Hey, you're now listening or watching the Halos in the Infield podcast with your hosts Todd Fox and Fernando the Lone Star Halo, brought to you in part by Noble L Works, just outside of Anaheim Stadium and the Pond, or the Honda Center, where you can get drink specials just by mentioning Halos in the Infield. Also brought to you in part by 714 Tickets. 714 Tickets is a place to go to get 10% off of any ticket purchase just by also mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield. Now enjoy the show. Hey, welcome into another episode of Halos in the Infield podcast with your host Todd Fox and the other host of the show,
the Memphis Halo.
Oh, with a Bucky sweater. I love that Bucky's logo.
Yeah, you still haven't gone, man. I can't, that's like, so Todd and I obviously talk off air often. I mean, and that's the one thing he always says. He's like, I've never made it out to Bucky's, but you best believe when I come to Texas.
Oh, yeah. It's gonna be on. That's gonna be on my bucket list to scratch off right when I get to Texas. So there you go.
You mean it's gonna be on your Bucky list?
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah. Dad jokes.
Exactly.
Dad jokes, dad laughs.
Let's get into the meat and potatoes, shall we? Because we got a lot to talk about in a short amount of time. What's the first topic on the board, my man?
So let's go ahead and let's first talk a little bit about the World Series, and just kind of talk about that. So at the time that we're recording this, Game 5 is taking place right now. It's still currently a 0-0 game, full discretion as we're recording. I think, I have it on the background here. The Diamondbacks have bases loaded with 2 outs. Nathan Eovaldi. So Nathan Eovaldi, we've talked about it all year. Talk about like the hidden gem for the Rangers, right? I mean, nobody thought he was going to be one of the most dominant pitchers in all of baseball. You got to give him his flowers.
Yeah, correct. When Boston first signed him, the first year or two of that contract, it was not good. And he started to pitch good at the end of his contract with them after leaving. Which team did he win the World Series with? Was it the I forget which team he was with prior, but
I didn't know he was a World Series champion.
Yeah, I think talking. Yeah, or he was with Boston originally, and then
I know that.
Yeah, and then he went away from Boston. Anyway, long story short, I think what they did is they did a good job with recouping his career. I mean, the guy had a really solid season in the first 3 months of the season.
He went with the Red Sox, for the record, in 2018.
There you go. Okay, so he got a contract off of that because I know he was one of the studs against the Dodgers in that World Series. But he pitched his butt off this year, was turning the clock back to 2018. And again, we talked about the other day, I mean, they just hit on all their freaking free agents, it seems, except DeGrom.
Yeah, and I mean, DeGrom was kind of a gamble, and I think they knew that going in, right? I mean, nobody can argue. When DeGrom is healthy, he's the best pitcher in baseball. And if you don't agree with that, you're a fool. The guy has consistently proven that when he is healthy, he's one of the best we've ever seen in our lifetime. Problem has always been that for him. Health has always been his biggest concern. And, that's one guy that's for sure a shame because he would have had an amazing career.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you could say the same about a pitcher we had last year here. His running mate there in New York, they had a staff set up to where you thought they'd have 3 or 4 aces for like the next 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, New York has consistently tried to spend money on pitching. With DeGrom, they had Noah Syndergaard, who's, I'm assuming who you're alluding to.
Yep.
Yeah. They had Matt Harvey when he was partying, when he was the Dark Knight.
Yeah, when he had a nosebleed.
Yeah, exactly. And, that was the best version of Matt Harvey there was. I mean, that version of Matt Harvey is one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Correct.
And who else have they had? I mean, obviously this year they had Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, neither of which ended up staying with the Mets. Go figure.
Yeah, and both of them played prominent roles in the postseason. Which, since we're talking about the postseason and Texas potentially winning a World Series by the time this podcast is over, or when it's set for tomorrow, what a wild, wacky postseason, bro. I mean, you have teams that we thought were studs from the beginning, like Tampa Bay, 13-0 to start the season. One of the best teams. They get surpassed by Baltimore. Atlanta wins a bunch of games. Dodgers win a bunch of games. None of those teams finished. It was wild cards again.
But that's the beauty of baseball, and that's what we love about baseball. You never know. It's about the team who's the hottest at any particular time. With the NFL, you tend to have these dynasty situations often, right? You had the Patriots, you currently have the Chiefs, and there's a lot of teams that, even though they're not winning consistent championships, they're consistently making it to the playoffs, right? The Broncos had their run. The Seahawks certainly had a 5 or 6 year stretch where they had one of the best defenses, and that propelled them to multiple deep playoff runs. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, the beauty in baseball is you had two teams that 2 years ago lost over 100 games. Yes. Two teams that were, in our minds, years away still, maybe a year or two away from just sniffing the playoffs or maybe being continuous playoff teams. But obviously, they're both ahead of schedule. The Diamondbacks didn't have to dig very deep into that farm system at the trade deadline to bolster their team. Mm-hmm. They got who was the guy who was the closer for the Mariners and went over the Diamondbacks, Sewald or whatever? Paul Sewald, maybe?
Paul Sewald, yeah.
Yeah, so the Diamondbacks didn't have to give up too much to get him. And that was at the time where we thought the Mariners were having a fire sale. And look what happened. The Mariners ended up contending to make it to the playoffs too. They didn't, but they made it interesting. They got Tommy Pham from the Mets. That was part of their fire sale. And look, both of those pieces have helped the Diamondbacks get to where they are today. And even if they lose this World Series, this was a very impressive run for the Diamondbacks. And you got to tip your cap. Great organization, did it the right way. And they're years ahead of a rebuild, and they're going to be good for years to come. And you can say the exact same thing with Texas.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, they put their money where their mouth is as far as Texas is concerned, and they've also built on the draft picks that they've accumulated. Arizona went all in. But just the way that they hit, it's fundamentally sound. Both these two teams can do the small ball thing. They can't hit as hard as Texas, but they can do some things. Corbin Carroll's just a phenom. And, again, like you said, the pitching's been up to par. The bullpen's been great. It's just my question to you is, it seems like since teams like the Angels and others won in the early 2000s, the league hated the fact that you had teams destroy their divisions just to get bounced in the first and second round. And ever since the expansion of more playoff teams, and it just seems like they try to kill the wild card team as fast as possible. And this year with a new format, I thought they were going to succeed. And lo and behold, the wild cards killed the big boys.
Yeah, we've seen that an awful lot lately in baseball, right? I mean, think about it. All those Giants teams at once when, Bruce Bochy was in charge of those teams. Yep. Wild card, all three of them, right?
Yep.
They didn't win a single division. It was, it was the Dodgers. I think one of those years was somebody else, right?
Yeah, I think one of the years was either San Diego or Arizona.
It wasn't San Diego, that's for sure. It might have been either Arizona. Yeah, Colorado was still pretty decent back then too.
But they weren't that good. They had like a 1 or 2 year stretch that I know.
What year didn't the Rockies make a World Series? Was that like 2007? 03.
Yeah.
No, 03 was the Marlins.
You sure?
Very sure.
Okay, then it was 04 because I know it was when Boston.
No, that was the Red Sox.
Boston beat the Rockies.
Cardinals.
But they beat the Rockies too.
Now we're in a standoff.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep it going. But anyway, I'm just.
It was 07 for the record.
Oh, okay, 07. Well, I knew they beat the Rockies. But the thing is, when it just seems like Manfred and others are trying to diminish the wild card and try to discourage teams from winning the wild card. But it backfired this year big time, and it's backfired, like you said, in recent times too. Yeah. So and now, like, even with you and when the season started this year, you were like, look, let's just get to the tournament. We'll see what happens. Because you're right. Anything can happen, dude. And it's starting to get that feel of a March Madness, just get to the tournament and see what happens. And,
who's the Cinderella story this year kind of thing?
Correct. And we have a Cinderella story in Arizona. And if Arizona wasn't there, the Cinderella would be Texas.
I mean, technically, I feel like both teams in a way are Cinderella teams. I mean, let's think about this. There wasn't a lot of people predicting that Texas would even make it out of the first round, or I guess make it to the first round technically. A lot of people didn't even think they were going to win the wild card.
Yeah,
And no,
I don't know who those people were, but they sure are stupid.
well, I'll say, yeah, right. I'll say this: I was the only one on the page that thought they would make it out of the first round.
Okay,
I thought they were going to get bounced by Houston immediately, and that didn't happen. We were all wrong.
Well, yeah,
somebody messaged us. I don't know if he wants a shout out. I mean, Martin, I'll give him one. Todd, what were you more wrong about this year? Between Suarez and the Rangers. But I mean, to your credit, everybody was wrong about the Rangers. Every single person. I mean, and now we're in a situation where they're most likely winning a World Series here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to be like Mad Dog Russo and be like, all right, listen, if the Diamondbacks win, I'm going to retire on the spot. Okay, I'm going to retire. And he didn't retire.
No.
But yeah, I'm not going to retire if the Rangers don't win. But them being up 3-1, this being a Bruce Bochy-led team, them having home field advantage after this game, if the Diamondbacks happen to lose, it's very likely that the Rangers are going to win. But I mean, hey, I'm hoping the Diamondbacks can pull it off. I mean, they're both fun teams to watch. And that's the thing, man. I'm so tired of having to say that teams that aren't the Angels are fun to watch, but it's true. These are two fun young teams, do things the right way. They play small ball and they can also hit homers. They're both complete packages.
Yeah, it's such a shame because, obviously Angels baseball hasn't been 100% fun the entire time that we've both been fans, but it's when your measuring stick is someone else in your division, at least 2 or 3 teams in your division, that you can watch on a nightly basis and just be like, man, I wish our team was like that. It gets pretty depressing, especially when your team doesn't change. A lot of teams over the course of the season said, okay, this isn't working. Let's change it up. Okay, these guys aren't working. Let's get rid of them. Let's add guys to help. It just seems like, and the Angels did, for their credit, make a few moves, but it just seems like every move was a disaster. And yeah, our team wasn't fun to watch. And yes, you're right. When you watch these teams bunt, single, go the other way, make the terrific play in the outfield, do the fundamentals, stealing bases, that's fun baseball, like you said. And you look over at our boys, it's like, no wonder why a lot of times people leave in the 7th inning. No wonder why a lot of times people will want to sell their tickets and so on and so on.
Yeah, and I know we have to change the topic here soon. So, basically, I'll leave it at this. It's just really frustrating when other organizations are continuously making the right moves. They make the right trades. They go after the right free agents. Look at the Rangers. You and I were talking off air, today when we were both working, about the fact that almost all of these Rangers hit, right? I don't mean like physically hit. I mean, almost every person they went after has come and made a positive impact on the organization and the team. Same thing with the Diamondback. Tommy Pham, Seawald to a big extent. Both came, made positive impacts to get their team to the postseason. I know Seawald's been a little iffy in the postseason, if I've been correct. I haven't watched too many of the Diamondbacks games, but from what I've heard. So with that being said, how come all these other teams, all these other organizations continue to do what you said, go after these key pieces, and every time we get anybody, they don't pan out? It doesn't matter if we're talking about David DeJesus in 2015, Brandon Phillips in 2017, Matt Harvey, Trevor Cahill. Sure, those guys were to be expected. But you get what I'm saying. How do we continuously whiff and whiff and whiff? And actually, that's what Hacksaw said. I know we're going to get to that shortly, but that's kind of my little bow on this topic.
I agree. It just comes down to what we're going to talk about next, I guess, unless we're moving on to another topic.
Yeah. I think I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit one last time about this World Series once it's officially over.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So moving on to the next topic, dude, what you got?
So you did an interview with the legend, Mr. Hacksaw, the Hacksaw.
Mm-hmm.
And a very familiar voice to those around Southern California. This guy's been talking sports since, most of you have been alive or a lot longer, depending who you are. He's been on the air for how many years? Seriously. Like,
He was almost 30 years before. I think it was 2000. I want to say 16 when they shut down the radio stations down there. They went corporate. So he's
oh
been a
yeah,
guy.
yeah, they shut down Mighty 1090
Yeah.
because he used to do a lot of the morning shows for Mighty 1090 in San Diego. Because I talked to my dad about it. I was like, oh hey, my co-host Todd did an interview with the Hacks on. He's like, oh really? And I was like, yeah, it felt weird,
Yeah, because
because high school voice for me.
he's one of the originators of sports talk on the West Coast. So he's known
Absolutely.
all up and down the West Coast. So he did some work for the Seahawks, my team. So yeah, I mean, he's a legend, and he broke it down pretty good. He talked about like what you were saying, the inconsistencies and deficiencies of this franchise. And his thing was, hey, let's get some baseball minds in here. Let's get some Hall of Famers. Let's get some guys who know and can critique and hire them on as consultants and agents to help this team turn around. Because obviously, like you said, those other teams you described that make the right moves, assign the right free agents, they have a culture in place. They have a way of doing things. They have a certain type of player they want. So they just don't look at what they did on the field. They look at the person behind the jersey and helmet. They want to know what makes that guy tick. And I think those are the franchises, like Lee said, that actually have that success, not the ones that just say willy-nilly next on the board.
The tough thing for the Angels, and they're in a very tough position, because I agree that front office people and baseball people should 100% have experience with baseball and in baseball. 100% agree with that. But he had said that the Angels need an experienced manager to come in and institute the culture. There isn't a lot of available managers out there who are experienced, who I would feel comfortable leading this team long term. I don't want a potential stopgap guy for the next 2 or 3 years, especially because we might not be competitive in the next 2 or 3 years. It's really going to depend on what happens this offseason, but there's a very good chance we won't be. So with that being said, do we need a guy like a Ron Washington or a Buck Showalter to come in here? Both very experienced managers. Both have had some deep playoff runs. Ron Washington with the Rangers, actually, when they made it to the World Series back-to-back years. They didn't win, but they made it. As of right now, we'd kill for a World Series run. Mm-hmm. And then Buck Showalter, I think he was also a manager for the Rangers for a little while. I think he was manager of the year for the Rangers. Sorry. He also had some good playoff runs with the Orioles.
He was a Yankee skipper too. Yep. He's been around. Just the problem with Buck is he has a shelf life. I mean, he rarely goes longer than 3 years before he starts ruffling feathers and things hit the fan. So it's like, that's what worries me about him. And again, he would have been a guy, like you said, if the Angels were ready, like the Rangers, on the cusp or getting to where they're supposed to be with all kinds of good help on the way, I would say, yeah, that would be the dude to get. And I know Lee was harping on him as far as a guy he would put in place, but I just think discipline needs to be encouraged on this team, accountability, all that. And I do agree, throwing it to a rookie is not going to do good either. But what has to happen, no matter who they put in place, is someone that's actually going to be able to run the team his way with his staff. And no matter how much analytics, like Lee said, they throw down, you got to be able to give that manager the last say on it.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for the Angels is going to be whoever they go with. You need to roll with him, for better or worse. And the organization needs to come out and say that, whether it's Perry, John Carpino, Dennis Kuhl, Roger Lodge, Artie Wayne, I don't give a damn. Whoever it is needs to come out and publicly say, hey, this is our guy, for better or worse. We're staying with them for 3 years.
Correct.
And that's what they need to do. They need to let the manager have the reins and deal with it no matter what.
Yeah, you're right. You got to let the guy sink or swim. And then the other question I was going to ask you, because he brought it up about, Artie Moreno, do you think that would work, him sitting down and opening it up and saying, hey, you know what, tell his publicist, whoever wants to interview me, let's talk it out. I want to reestablish myself in the community. I want to reestablish myself as the owner of the Angels and come out of hiding, because we can all agree with Hacksaw, and we've said it before too. Dude's been reclusive. He's staying away. He does not like the bad negativity. The only way you could change that is if you try to flip the script, right? Do you think he's going to do that?
No, he won't do it, but he should if he wants to repair his public image. And like Hacksaw said, the media is not going anywhere. And nowadays we live in a world where any Yahoo can get a podcast like us, and for whatever reason, not only do people listen, but sponsors pay. So hey, whatever, it is what it is. I'm not complaining. I appreciate the avenue we have to talk Angels baseball. I appreciate the fact that people listen, and obviously we try to do what we can with our voice positive to make the community a better place. But with all that being said, the media is absolutely not going anywhere. It's only getting bigger and bigger as it gets more and more accessible to be a member of the media. So with that being said, Artie needs to do exactly what Hacksaw said. Be public again. Say, here's what it is. We've had some bad years, because here's the thing. I hated the fact that he went, quote unquote, all in at the trade deadline, right? We got Lucas Giolito. We got Ronaldo Lopez. We got CJ Cron. We got Randall Grichuk. Nobody can say that Artie didn't take his best swing at it. And for that, I will commend Artie Moreno for giving it a shot. All we ever wanted was for the team to have a sense of direction, and it didn't work out, but they had a sense of direction. So the last thing that you and I or any of the other fans who've been complaining for that can do is complain now. We got what we wanted, and for better or worse, we have to live through it. So with that being said, I got pissed off that he gave up when under the salary cap or the luxury tax, essentially backed out of what he promised the fans, and he didn't publicly comment on it. I could have lived with it if he would have commented and been like, hey, here's what happened. I want to go into the luxury tax so we can focus on next year. Okay, there's valor in that. You stepped up to the plate. You were a man about it. You're a man of your word. You said you were going to do this. You said you had unfinished business. You took care of that unfinished business, and it just didn't work out. And that happens. I can live with that.
Yeah, I can too. If he were to say that and make it happen and come to the media and tell you, hey, I want to make sure this season's going to be good for next or the next season's going to be good for Angel fans. I know we tried, but it just didn't work. And my promise to you and everyone else is that we're going to make this work for next season, and we're going to start from scratch next year. Anything. But when you back out, it was a weasel move, and I think all the fans saw it. And it's like you said earlier when we talked, it's going to deject future signings here. Other players from saying, hey, I don't want to go to Anaheim because what if I want to buy a nice expensive house in the OC and they cut me or they trade me? It's not going to work.
Yeah, especially because stopgap guys has kind of been the trend here in Anaheim. So with that being said, who's going to want to sign a 1-year contract knowing that they truly are dispensable?
And
look what happened to Hunter Renfroe.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say too is you could put a really good all-star lineup out there for Anaheim. It's not going to matter if you don't have the right coaches in place, if you don't have the right system, and if you're putting way too much analytics. All that is just a recipe for disaster. And so if you're not all on the same page and you can't work all together, you're going to get what we got last year, which
Absolutely.
We did have a talented team, injuries aside, and they still couldn't do anything because they were being coached wrong and taught wrong, and things were called the wrong way.
Yeah, and it's really hard to simply always blame injuries because every team deals with injuries. But the thing is, a lot of these teams have guys either in the minors or they trade for pieces to step up. And, the Angels tried that, right? I mean, they had a giant hole at first base. They tried to get CJ Cron, and CJ Cron's had a healthy career. For whatever reason, he comes here and naturally gets injured. So I know that this question's super open-ended because it's really going to depend on who the manager is. But, actually, before we get into that, let me ask you this. Torrey Hunter is a name that's floated around a lot for a first-time manager. Okay? He's got zero management experience. Or Darren Erstad's another guy, but Darren Erstad coached in college or managed in college. So with that being said, Torrey Hunter, how do you feel about Torrey and your short answer? Can he be a decent manager if he truly is a candidate here in Anaheim?
I wouldn't give him the manager spot. I'd give him a bench coach because I do think his influence would just be phenomenal on this team. I mean, talk about the last true real leader this club had, and the reasons we got rid of him were absolutely stupid. But long story short, and shortest answer I could say is he would do phenomenal things as far as chemistry and culture for this team.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. And he's a guy also who I think, perhaps you give a guy like him a baseball executive role. I mean, hey, the Marlins former GM, Kim, I forgot her last name. She's available and she's looking for, a high up position. That is a baseball woman who knows what she's doing.
Oh,
That's a phone call you should be making immediately. But once again, Artie has his friends, Dennis Cool, John Carpino. We know they're very close with Artie. So it's always kind of been Artie in the squad, unfortunately. So I don't think Artie's always in it for baseball. He's in it for the money. And hey, I'll tip my cap off to him. He's a great businessman. Clearly, none of us can argue that. Guy's made tons and tons and tons of money.
mm-hmm.
But just not a good baseball guy. And neither is Dennis Cool, neither is John Carpino. But so I know that's the manager is completely up in the air. I think Torrey Hunter could be a great baseball front office guy. I think he could be a good baseball executive because he was been there and he's did that.
See, I would have loved to have, since we're losing coaches down the AAA level too. Last thing I'll say about it is I would have loved for the Angels to have hired the Troy Percivals, the Darren Erstads, the Torrey Hunters, and Tim Salmons and Chuck Finley, even who both of them obviously have aspirations to be coaches. Send them down and let them run the AAA farm system. Let them run the Trash Pandas, whatever. Let them get experience down there. And if they're making great moves down there and they're really showing their stuff, then bring them up. You know what I mean? In the meantime, hire I guess, if you want your Buck Showalter to run, because obviously he ain't going to give you more than 3 years. That's all I'm saying.
The problem is with the Angels is they don't promote from within often in terms of like the minor league levels up. Now I know Matt Wise was a minor league guy. It hasn't happened lately where they've promoted a guy from down below to an upper level position. I mean, Eric Chavez was a guy who was, I think, the Salt Lake Bees manager, and right after Socha had left, and he was the guy who I was very interested in at the major league job, and for whatever reason, the Angels didn't feel that he was worth the shot there. I know he just interviewed with the Padres. Phil Nevin apparently has been a guy who I believe has interviewed with the Padres, from what I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a big player there for a couple years, so that's kind of a hometown guy for them. So that maybe that's a better fit for him down there. Who knows? Maybe it is.
We would know exactly if the Padres were to start to win and they took the chains off of him and he was a hard-nosed badass again. We would be like, oh, that we know exactly why he sucked up here in Anaheim.
Yeah, exactly. Artie.
Yeah.
So, and who's obviously Benji Gill. That's another guy who's been thrown around. I mean, that's still kind of my guy personally. That's the guy who I'm cheering for.
My question to you is a two-parter, real quick. It's a real quick answer.
Yeah.
You got 5 teams who need a manager. In what order do you think the Angels make their managerial, move? And number 2, how long do you think it's going to take?
So let's see. We got the Padres. We got the Angels. Who are the other 3? The Mets. Yep.
Cleveland and someone else. There's a 5th team. I just know. Oh, the Padres.
I already said Padres.
Oh, well, I know there's 5 teams because I saw the logos on Instagram.
Are you sure it's not 4 now? Because the Giants got their guy. They got Bob Melvin.
Okay, so it's 4 now. Yeah, Giants. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Bob Melvin for the Giants, probably an ideal situation, right? I mean, you got to – he played – exactly. Yeah. He played for the Giants, I believe. He obviously managed for roughly 10 years for Oakland. Went down to San Diego, made a deep playoff run, had a horrible year this year. Now he's back up there. So, good for him. Probably the best candidate for them that was available at the moment. I would imagine Bob Melvin was probably the biggest name available, right? Mm-hmm. And besides that, yeah, I mean, it's Buck Showalter. I mean, there was the guy that Hacksaw had brought up from the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I know we mentioned before, like Skip Schumacher. There's a few other guys that
if he leaves the Marlins, I don't think he's been fired or officially walked away yet.
Craig Counsell's also been another guy that's rumored because Milwaukee has all kinds of internal problems. So he might be a guy that could get his contract bought out and leave.
But see, Craig Counsell's a guy who went up in the Brewers system.
Yep.
made a career with them.
Yep.
And then he came back to manage. And I mean, I would say it's worked out for them, right? They've had some good teams. Sure, they haven't won any championships, but only one team wins a championship a year.
Yeah, they've had a couple deep playoff runs though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I mean, perhaps that's what we need. We need a guy who hasn't played too long ago, is still understanding the heartbeat of current baseball, can use a healthy blend of analytics and using their gut. There really is a healthy balance that exists.
There is.
We see it all around the league, and guys just continue to miss on it. But I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about the coaching staff once we find out who the manager is. But right now, there simply just isn't any answers until we find out who the manager is. But we've talked a little bit about the candidates, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And hey, the Rangers just took a 1-0 lead, which very well means that the season might end tonight. Yeah. Which means we'll get some answers pretty quick here on, Shohei Ohtani. I mean, obviously he's going to be a free agent. I have every ounce of confidence in the world that he's going to elect free agency. Is it possible the Angels might resign him? Sure, but if we were Ohtani, we'd hit the open market too. Who are you kidding?
If Ohtani were to sign back with the Angels, I'll just put to you this way: I'll do my first post game in just my boxing shorts. So.
Post game of the season, like opening day?
Opening day, post game, and just boxer shorts, and maybe a clown face. So
okay, but it has to be like one of those like funny boxer shorts, like the ones that has like a little like elephant trunk. You don't have to be in the elephant trunk, but I mean, like you got to be, you got to go all out.
TMI for my first bachelor party, they bought me one of those. It was like a tuggy, and then obviously when the trunk came up, it made sound. It made that. So.
That's hilarious. Yeah, my I don't know if I should share this. My girlfriend just got me like a pair of like not elephant or zero noises, but like one of those kind of boxers. And it was laundry day like a couple weeks ago, and I put it on to work one day, and I was like, these are really comfortable to wear at work.
Don't tell me when you bent down, they saw the thong riding up, or no?
Oh, it wasn't a thong. They're a pair of boxers.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, they're a pair of boxers. Yeah, no. One time I remember bending over, and I forgot what kind of shorts I had. It was like boxers with like something on it.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was something like embarrassing on it.
Yeah, Roger Lodge was on the front, like, hey.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have any Bucky's boxers, surprisingly. You think I would?
Yeah. You would think you'd have something, the Bucky's watch, wristband, whatever, you have all decked out.
I have Bucky's, a bunch of stuff, but I don't have any Bucky's boxers. Maybe I'll buy you those for Christmas.
Hey, that might work. I'll rock it. So we have anything else here? We have a few more minutes.
I don't think so, man. I mean, we already kind of established there's not really much to talk about in terms of the coaching staff because so much is still yet to be answered about it.
Well, I tell you what, for those listening right now, if you're not watching on YouTube, the background for my boy here, Lone Star Halo, it looks like before a baseball game, not during a game, and there's not too many fans in the stands. That could be us next year, depending on what happens this offseason. We could be rocking that kind of attendance in the background.
I kind of hope so, man. I mean, because at least that means we have a sense of direction. This franchise and front office needs to be realistic. Mm-hmm. We've said it, and we're probably going to say it all offseason, and all the fans probably agree with us. The Rangers aren't going anywhere. Seattle's not going anywhere. Houston's not going anywhere. And Oakland's probably about 2 years away, probably 1 year, knowing Oakland. They come out of nowhere like a cockroach every time. So with that being said, we could be a year or two away from being the fifth place team consistently in this division because, Texas is only going to get stronger. I would say in the next 2 or 3 years, here's my hot take. I think Houston will start to suck again. I think we're going to start slowly seeing those days. Their guys are starting to age out. They have guys like Pena come out of nowhere, but, their pitching isn't as strong as it was before. They're starting to show cracks in the foundation now.
Yeah, they're not as strong. And then obviously who they get as a manager is going to be very key going into this offseason too. If they're not able to land someone that's going to balance those.
Oh, that was the other team, right? I don't think we said Houston.
Okay, so there's a fifth team. Yeah, I knew I saw 5 teams.
I don't think we had said Houston. I mean, someone's gonna correct. Someone's yelling like, "You idiot! That was the third team you said."
I forgot about that just because I just remembered that that Dusty Baker retired, but that is a great job to get. So my thing
Absolutely.
is, I think that's top priority. I would put the Padres job at 2, and then
Yeah.
the Angels at 3, and then you got Cleveland in the other one. So yeah, that. I don't know. We're as Angel fans, we got to be patient. Again, in 9 years is a lot of patience. It's tested a lot of fans. A lot of people are apathetic. A lot of people are pissed off, and we're gonna see, man. Again, this is another big off season for the Angels.
I would make the argument that this is the biggest year of their franchise history, because
Okay.
what's going to happen? You know what I mean? I mean, there's literally from the top down. There's so many issues. Let's avoid talking about the front office for a second. The manager, the stadium's literally starting to come into shambles.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, man, the stadium's not looking very good in some spots. So where are you going to play in a couple of years? Are you going to completely remodel the Big A? And once you throw that on the side, what are you going to do with this organization? This organization isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Do you use a guy like Trout to be part of your manager hire? And honestly, I would say you probably bring him in. I mean, as of right now, he's probably going to be your top guy. If Ohtani does resign, you bring him in too, and you say, you know what? You guys hire the manager.
Yeah.
I think you let them make the decision. They know the kind of guy they want to play for, and maybe that helps motivate these guys a little bit more. Hell, maybe you even bring Rendon in. Not because he's earned that, but because maybe he'll be motivated to play. Seriously. I mean, at this point, you got to do something.
Yeah, something's got to change. My only thing, last thing I'll say is Mike Trout's getting up there in age. Obviously, like he's not this young 20s, not your age anymore. And, it's just going to get louder, especially when Ohtani goes, a bigger spotlight's going to be on him as far as Trout's wasting his career in Anaheim. And if his numbers continue to diminish, we saw the best of him. It's just going to be sad stories from here on out. I know we've talked about the albatross of moving that contract and him having to say yes to whatever movement this team would want to make. But man, I feel that's going to hinder the team moving forward, especially if we're, like you say, falling into that 5th place contender every year.
And here's what I'll say to put a bow on today's episode. My thing, and the thing that pisses me off the most, is how most fans are like, well, they're wasting Ohtani, they're wasting Trout, and we've heard that for years. How come fans don't go after other teams? For instance, I don't see Aaron Judge winning anything in New York. Guy hasn't made the playoffs much in his career, at least not deep playoff runs. I mean, nobody's talking about the Yankees winning the World Series anytime soon. So with that said,
he doesn't do anything when he's there either.
Well, exactly. Yeah, he hasn't shown up when he has been in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So that being said, nobody goes after him.
It's the media and who they want to attack. Like they
exactly. It fits their narrative to be anti-West Coast.
Yeah, if the Angels are winning, they're not talking about them. But the Angels are losing, mired in last place. You got Stephen A. Smith mouthing off. So
yeah, well, exactly. You get clicks for talking trash about the Angels. So,
well, good show, my man.
Absolutely.
And we got some exciting news that we're going to be debuting as we move along here, especially coming towards the winter meetings. We're going to be more active, and then we got a couple events coming up. So, and a new platform to talk about, but all that's saved for another show. But we just appreciate your time on Halos in the Infield. And so for Todd Fox and
the last thing, real quick.
Oh, my bad.
I wanted to say thank you to Courtney. I know she's she listens pretty periodically, so she I don't know if I can say. I mean, she left the page to go do some other things, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to go ahead and say thank you for for her time with us, and we're looking forward to making some other future announcements about maybe getting some new voices on the podcast.
Absolutely.
But on behalf, since Todd already signed off, on behalf of me, the Lone Star Halo, thanks so much for listening, guys.